Oh, I wish her all the very best. I can't wait to meet her because we haven't yet met.
Just 1 minute ago, a wave of emotion swept through the palace as heartbreaking news about Catherine quietly emerged, leaving even seasoned staff visibly shaken. This was not an announcement made through microphones or flashing cameras. It was felt first in hushed corridors, lowered voices, and tearful faces among those who have served the royal household for years. Sources describe an atmosphere unlike any other, one where professionalism gave way to raw human emotion. Staff members, many of whom have worked closely with Catherine and witnessed her strength, warmth, and resilience firsthand, struggled to hold back tears as the reality set in. This was not routine concern. It was the kind of moment that stops time, where words feel insufficient and silence speaks louder than any statement. What made the situation especially painful was the suddenness. There was no gradual build-up, no prepared reassurance. Instead, the news arrived with a weight that could not be softened. Behind closed doors, schedules were paused, conversations halted, and attention shifted to one priority alone: care, dignity, and compassion. As word began to spread quietly within palace walls, one truth became clear. This was more than a difficult update. It was a moment that deeply affected everyone who knew Catherine, not just as a royal figure, but as a person. And as the palace struggled to process what had been confirmed, the world outside remained unaware of just how emotional this moment truly was. Inside the palace, the moment the heartbreaking news about Catherine became known, everything changed. What is often described as a place of strict discipline and emotional restraint was suddenly overtaken by a rare stillness. Palace staff, trained to remain composed in even the most difficult circumstances, found themselves struggling to maintain that control. For many, this was not just another difficult day at work. It was personal. Catherine has long been more than a senior royal to those who work closely with her. Staff members describe her as consistently kind, attentive, and deeply respectful. Someone who knew names, remembered personal details, and treated every role within the palace as essential. That is why the news affected them so deeply. When the confirmation reached inner circles, it was met not with panic but with quiet disbelief. Some staff reportedly stepped away from their duties, needing a moment to process what they had just learned. The palace operates on routine, structure, and order. Yet in moments like this, routine bends. Meetings were delayed, schedules softened, and priorities reshaped. Senior aides moved quickly, not to manage publicity, but to protect the emotional environment within the palace itself. The focus shifted inward, ensuring that Catherine was surrounded by calm, privacy, and unwavering support. Medical professionals were already in close coordination with senior advisors. Their role was not only to assess and monitor, but to guide how the household should adapt in response. Health matters of this nature are treated with extreme sensitivity, and staff were reminded that discretion was not merely protocol. It was an act of respect. Every instruction carried weight, and every decision was made with care. What made the situation especially difficult for staff was the emotional contrast. Catherine has long been seen as a pillar of strength, someone who rarely showed vulnerability in public and who carried herself with quiet determination. To suddenly face news that challenged that image was deeply unsettling. For those who had watched her balance duty, family, and public life with grace, the reality was hard to reconcile. Prince William's presence was immediately felt. Though much of his response remained private, staff noted a visible shift in the palace's emotional tone once he was fully informed. His priority was clear: protect Catherine, protect their children, and minimize disruption wherever possible. Instructions flowed calmly but decisively, reinforcing a sense of order at a time when emotions threatened to overwhelm. King Charles was also kept closely informed. His response, according to those present, was measured and deeply concerned. This was not handled as a distant constitutional matter but as a family crisis. The coordination between father and son helped stabilize the atmosphere within the palace, offering reassurance to staff that leadership remained steady, compassionate, and focused. Among the staff, conversations were hushed and brief. There was no speculation, no gossip, only concern. Many employees have served the family for decades, witnessing moments of joy, loss, and transition. Yet several describe this moment as particularly painful, precisely because of Catherine's character. She was not distant or untouchable to them. She was present, engaged, and genuinely warm. That human connection made the news harder to bear. Support systems were quietly activated. Trusted figures were assigned to ensure that staff working closest to the family had emotional backing. The palace understands that when those providing care are emotionally affected, the entire environment can suffer. By acknowledging that impact rather than suppressing it, senior aides aim to maintain both compassion and professionalism. Outside the palace, the world remained largely unaware of the depth of emotion unfolding within. No dramatic statements were released. No urgent briefings were held. This silence was intentional. The goal was not to control narrative, but to create space for assessment, for care, and for emotional grounding. In moments like this, speed is not strength. Stability is. The children's routines were also carefully protected. Staff were instructed to preserve normalcy wherever possible, understanding that young lives absorb tension even when words are withheld. Play, study, and quiet family time were prioritized. Every effort was made to ensure that Catherine's role as a mother remained central, not overshadowed by circumstance. What emerged most clearly during this phase was the depth of respect Catherine commands within the palace. Tears among staff were not a sign of weakness, but of connection. They reflected years of shared moments, mutual respect, and genuine affection. In an institution often viewed as distant, this moment revealed its most human side. Of this unfolding story is defined not by public reaction, but by private emotion. The heartbreak that left palace staff in tears was rooted in care, loyalty, and love, emotions rarely visible beyond palace walls. And as the household adjusted quietly around Catherine, one truth became undeniable. This was not just a royal matter. It was a deeply human one. As the palace adjusted to the weight of the heartbreaking news, a new rhythm quietly took hold. It was slower, more deliberate, shaped by sensitivity rather than ceremony. Staff members who had served through decades of royal transitions understood instinctively that this was a moment requiring restraint, empathy, and unity. The focus was no longer on maintaining appearances, but on creating an environment where Catherine could be supported with dignity and care. Medical coordination intensified behind closed doors. Specialists worked closely with palace doctors, sharing observations and outlining careful next steps. Their guidance emphasized stability, reduced stress, and constant monitoring. This information was shared selectively, ensuring clarity without overwhelming those involved. For staff, this meant adapting quickly, adjusting schedules, limiting movement in certain areas, and maintaining absolute discretion. Every instruction was followed with quiet urgency. Prince William's role during this phase became more defined. While public visibility remained minimal, his presence within the palace was constant. Those nearby observed a man balancing concern with control, emotion with responsibility. His interactions were described as calm, focused, and protective. Rather than seeking reassurance, he sought understanding, asking practical questions, clarifying timelines, and ensuring that Catherine's comfort remained the top priority. The emotional impact on staff continued to surface in subtle ways. Long-serving aides spoke of a heaviness they had not felt in years. Catherine was not viewed as a distant figure of authority, but as someone deeply woven into the daily life of the palace. Her kindness, consistency, and approachability had built trust over time. Facing uncertainty about her condition felt like losing a sense of emotional stability within the institution itself. Senior aides responded by reinforcing support structures. Staff rotations were adjusted to prevent exhaustion, and trusted supervisors checked in quietly with those most affected. The palace understands that emotional strain can compromise judgment, and in moments like this, maintaining clarity is essential. By acknowledging the human impact rather than suppressing it, leadership fostered a sense of collective resilience. King Charles remained closely engaged as well. Though much of his involvement remained private, his influence was evident in the tone of decisions being made. Compassion-guided policy. Patience replaced urgency. His coordination with William reinforced a shared approach, one that placed family well-being above all else. This alignment provided reassurance not only to the family, but to the staff who looked to leadership for direction. The children's routines continued to be carefully protected. Tutors, caregivers, and aides were instructed to maintain consistency, ensuring that schoolwork, playtime, and family interaction remained as normal as possible. This approach reflected a deep understanding of how uncertainty can affect young minds. By preserving routine, the palace aimed to provide a sense of safety amid emotional disruption. Outside the palace walls, speculation began to grow, but inside, silence prevailed. No internal discussions entertained rumors or outside narratives. Staff were reminded that silence was not avoidance, but respect. In health-related matters, particularly those involving Catherine, restraint was viewed as an act of loyalty. This collective discipline reinforced the seriousness of the situation. Emotionally, this phase was marked by quiet endurance. Tears were no longer as visible, replaced by focused determination. Staff carried on their duties with heightened awareness, understanding that their composure directly affected the household's emotional climate. In many ways, this was an unspoken pact, to be strong, not for appearance, but for care. Medical updates continued at measured intervals. Each update was treated with gravity, assessed carefully, and acted upon methodically. There was no rush to conclusions, no pressure to communicate prematurely. This patience reflected experience, an understanding that health journeys unfold in phases, and that forcing clarity can create harm rather than comfort. For many within the palace, this period reinforced why Catherine is so deeply respected. Her influence extended beyond public appearances and charitable work. She shaped the internal culture of the household through kindness, respect, and emotional intelligence. The staff's response to the news was a testament to that legacy. Of this unfolding story is defined by adaptation and resolve. The initial shock has settled into focused care. Tears have given way to strength. And within the palace, a quiet determination has taken hold to support Catherine fully, protect her privacy fiercely, and carry forward with compassion at the center of every decision. As the days progressed, the palace entered a phase defined by quiet vigilance rather than visible urgency. The initial shock had faded, but the emotional weight remained. For palace staff, this period required a different kind of strength, the ability to function steadily while carrying concern that could not be spoken aloud. Every corridor felt quieter, every interaction more deliberate, shaped by a shared understanding of the seriousness surrounding Catherine's condition. Medical oversight continued with careful consistency. Doctors emphasized observation, balance, and patience, reinforcing that not all health journeys offer immediate clarity. Updates were shared privately and selectively, ensuring that those who needed to know were informed without creating unnecessary anxiety. This approach allowed the household to move forward without being consumed by uncertainty. Even as concern lingered beneath the surface, Prince William's presence during this stage was described as grounding. He did not seek attention, nor did he withdraw. Instead, he remained quietly engaged, ensuring that Catherine was comfortable and that the children felt secure. Staff observed that his focus was unwavering. Every decision filtered through one question alone: what best supports Catherine and their family right now? That clarity helped stabilize the emotional tone within the palace. King Charles also maintained close involvement. While his role required balancing broader responsibilities, his attention to family matters was evident. Communication between father and son remained frequent and aligned, reinforcing a shared approach rooted in compassion and restraint. This unity at the highest level of the household offered reassurance to staff, who relied on consistent leadership during uncertain times. For palace employees, the emotional challenge lay not in dramatic moments, but in sustained care. Many describe this phase as the hardest, when adrenaline fades and reality settles in. Routine tasks carried new meaning. Small gestures, such as preparing quiet spaces or ensuring uninterrupted rest, became acts of care. Staff took pride in contributing to Catherine's comfort, even in subtle ways. The children's routines continued to be protected with particular care. Tutors, aides, and caregivers worked together to preserve structure, understanding that consistency offers emotional safety. Play, learning, and family interaction were treated as essential, not optional. This effort reflected a collective commitment to shielding the youngest members of the family from unnecessary stress. Even as adults around them carried concern, silence remained a defining feature of this phase. Outside speculation did not penetrate palace walls. Staff were reminded that discretion was not merely policy, but an expression of respect for Catherine and her family. In an age of constant information, choosing silence required discipline, and it was upheld without hesitation. Emotionally, this period demanded endurance. Tears were now rare, replaced by quiet resolve. Staff members leaned on one another subtly, sharing understanding glances rather than words. In these moments, the palace felt less like an institution and more like a family bound by shared responsibility and care. Medical discussions began to focus more on management than reaction. While uncertainty remained, clearer parameters allowed for structured planning. Adjustments to daily life were made thoughtfully, ensuring flexibility without disruption. This balance helped restore a sense of steadiness, even as vigilance continued. For many within the palace, this phase underscored Catherine's impact. Her absence from normal routines was felt deeply, not because of protocol, but because of presence. She had shaped the culture around her through kindness and empathy, and that influence continued even as she focused on her health. The staff's dedication reflected gratitude as much as duty. Is defined by patience, unity, and quiet strength. The palace did not seek resolution before it was ready. Instead, it chose steadiness over speed, care over commentary. And in doing so, it revealed something rarely seen: the deeply human rhythm that exists behind palace walls when compassion becomes the guiding force. As this difficult chapter continued, the palace settled into a rhythm defined by care, patience, and emotional discipline. By now, everyone within the household understood that this was not a moment for urgency in words or gestures, but for steadiness. The earlier shock that had left staff in tears had transformed into a quieter, more enduring resolve, one built on loyalty to Catherine and a shared commitment to protecting her space and dignity. Medical teams remained deeply involved, maintaining a careful balance between monitoring and allowing rest. Their guidance emphasized consistency, reduced pressure, and emotional calm. Palace staff adapted instinctively. Corridors near private family areas were kept clear, voices remained low, and movement was minimized. These small adjustments were not mandated by instruction alone. They were acts of collective respect. Everyone understood that recovery, whatever form it may take, depends as much on environment as it does on treatment. Prince William continued to anchor the household emotionally. His presence was steady rather than visible, reassuring rather than directive. Those who interacted with him described a quiet determination, a focus on listening, understanding, and responding thoughtfully. His role during this phase was not to project strength outward, but to preserve stability inward. That approach resonated deeply with staff, reinforcing a sense of calm purpose. King Charles remained closely aligned with this approach. While constitutional responsibilities required his attention, his concern for Catherine and the family shaped the tone of every internal decision. Compassion guided scheduling, messaging, and planning. There was no rush to restore normal appearances, no pressure to signal reassurance prematurely. Instead, the emphasis remained firmly on care and readiness. Within the palace workforce, emotional resilience became a shared responsibility. Supervisors checked in quietly, ensuring that those most affected had support. Long-serving staff, many of whom had witnessed previous moments of national grief, remarked on how deeply personal this situation felt. Catherine's consistent warmth over the years had forged genuine bonds, making this period emotionally demanding in a way few had experienced before. The children's well-being continued to guide daily decisions. Tutors, caregivers, and aides worked closely to preserve routine, understanding that predictability provides comfort during uncertainty. Laughter was encouraged where possible, learning continued without pressure, and family time was protected. These efforts were not symbolic, they were essential. Staff recognized that emotional security for the children helped stabilize the entire household. Silence outside the palace remained intentional. While speculation continued beyond the gates, inside there was no appetite for narrative or reaction. Discretion held firm. Staff understood that restraint was not about secrecy, but about respect. Catherine's condition was not treated as a subject to be managed, but as a reality to be supported. As days passed, a sense of collective strength emerged. The tears that had marked the early moments were replaced by purpose. Staff carried out their roles with heightened awareness, knowing that their composure shaped the emotional climate around Catherine. In many ways, this phase revealed the palace at its most human, not defined by ceremony, but by care. Medical conversations increasingly focused on management and support rather than response. While uncertainty had not disappeared, clarity in approach provided reassurance. Plans were adjusted gently with flexibility built in. Nothing was forced. This patience reflected experience and trust in process, an understanding that healing in any form cannot be rushed. For many within the palace, this period deepened appreciation for Catherine's influence. Her absence from familiar routines was felt keenly, yet her presence remained. Tangible through the culture she had shaped. Kindness, respect, and empathy, qualities she consistently embodied, now guided the household in her stead. The staff's dedication was not merely professional. It was personal. Of this unfolding story is defined by endurance and quiet solidarity. There were no dramatic turns, no public moments of release. Instead, there was continuity, care sustained over time, attention maintained without fatigue, and compassion practiced daily. This is often the hardest part of any crisis. When attention fades but responsibility does not. As the palace continues forward, the focus remains unchanged. Catherine's well-being comes first. Privacy is guarded. Support is constant. And behind the walls of tradition and protocol, a household moves together with shared purpose. This phase does not bring resolution, but it brings strength. Strength found not in headlines or declarations, but in patience, loyalty, and love. And in that quiet strength, the palace carries Catherine forward with dignity, respect, and unwavering care.